welcome to the Civilian Pay Analysis video series. Now this is version 1.0, starting with the training event at Joint Base San Antonio in December of 2016. We're implementing version controls, implementing our lessons learned, and updating tools as it becomes appropriate, and to maximize the user experience and the ability to provide analysis and decision support. And Civilian Pay is a great example of decision support to leaders. Can I hire people? What do I need to do? How about LWOP? So on and so forth. So let's go ahead and get started. If you had the last one, the last tool I should say, some of this will look very familiar. And again, credit where credit is due. When I came into the job, I came into a product something like this. And I believe it was made maybe 10 years ago. Now Colonel Pinkert, I believe, made a Civilian Pay tool implementing the free tools we have available to us by Microsoft, pulling in the data, making pivot tables, and putting it out to the field. So a lot of this is very similar to that. We've updated it for current use, and because the tools are more powerful in 2016, it's going to be able to do a little bit more for us and a little bit faster. So let's go ahead and get started. And all the way to the right side, this was added. So this is just a notes page, and as it turns out, and I'll show you, I made my first note because in FY17 it is kind of a unique year in terms of Civ Pay. The first pay period is 80 hours. The last pay period is 80 hours. But there is a 1 October, and one member in my unit actually recorded hours in ATAPS on Sunday 1 October. Completely legitimate, but what I had to do is make a note that says, hey, I know this guy did 12 hours, so we're going to make an adjustment to the actual CivPay query in this case to say pay periods beginning with 15 October 2016. It's not material to the analysis, but I need to make sure that I know that this was actual execution. So pay hour codes table. These are tables. Now we do have a prelude video that kind of goes over CivPay a little bit, some of the actual data elements, what they mean. This is more or less the Excel, why did we do what we do, and how do we use the tool. So this is a new table though, pay period. What happened in the prior tools was that there was a hard-coded value in a pivot table calculated field. So we don't want that if possible. So what this does is it reaches back to the front page, the work year execution page, and says, based upon the inputs you've given me, and this is what you'll do. So I'll sidebar here real quick. You're going to fill in and on your screen I think it ends up looking orange, but these are yellow. Initial data to be entered in yellow, so you'll input in yellow off of your MRV, or just things that you know or get from NGB guidance, and then that will do a bunch of calculations in the background. But I want you to be able to see this because we want to be able to make calculations not based on hard-coded amounts. We want to make calculations based on things that are automated and adjustable, so it doesn't throw you for a loop if you're going to use this in FY18 where 2080 may not be the case. So that's what this tool is. It goes back into the raw data and gives a fractional amount to roll up so that the math works out right. So that's what this does. What it's saying is in pay period ending 15 October, there's 2,329 records. Fiscal year hours to do a work year in this case is 2080. So it's just going to do the math real quick. The reason why we do this in a side table is because Excel now only has to do this many calculations. It does a count if, I believe, on the raw data for these, and then it does a simple division on this. So instead of trying to do that calculation against tens of thousands of records, we do it once for each of these cells and then one simple division here. It's a way to speed up the tool. So the other thing that we added new was this passcode. We brought the passcode into the raw data. So why don't we utilize it? We have to organize and coordinate with the HR to see where people are being placed and how the data comes through. So we're doing these checks, whether it's a 3821 audit or it's a simple monthly or quarterly visit that you have, we can see now these members being placed in their squadrons per passcode. So that can definitely help in terms of visualizing and making sure you know what's going on with your people. Pay hour code. So this is an extract of the pay hour code table. Just for awards, I want to be able to see awards separately from all of the other pay hour codes so that I can report on them separately. And then finally is the pay hour code table that we're used to seeing. So this includes all the pay hour codes that we can get our hands on per DFAS. And so what this is going to say is include hours, yes, no. That means that if does it include them in the hours work. Now what we've done, and if you look at the prelude video again, we've gone through here and tried to find and ensure that all of these are actually count towards hours worked. So if you're getting a pay that has to do with increased pay for doing something like explosives and incendiary material, if you're getting paid based on that, that may be an increase to your hourly amount. In terms, so $20 and you get an extra $2 for this particular type of pay. But does it mean that if you worked 80 hours that you worked more than 80? So, and the answer is no. So that's how we do this. That's how the data is calculated. So moving on, again, just to recap before we move on, this table is new and it's in there automated. This table is new. When you update this cell right here, it fills that down for the rest of them and ensures that we have the proper factors so the calculations are happening correctly. Going on to the raw data itself. Now we spent some time in here in the prelude video, but again, some of these and I will say this: some of the videos that we do, we build from scratch. We go from a blank workbook to building them up. In this particular tool, there's far too much, to be quite honest. There's far too many calculations to just build from scratch and show you each individual one. So we're going to go through here and try to make sense of this for you, but it's just not feasible to build a tool from scratch for this particular one. So I want to make it make sense. I want to show you when I can, but I just can't build it from scratch. So squadron here is that VLOOKUP we're doing against the passcode. It's just putting that squadron in for use for our pivots. Hours and pay period, that's the link back to that table right here in pay codes. That's the link back here. So for every one of our hours in the pay period, for this pay period we're getting the 89, that's that factor. And you can see there's 3 different factors because there's only 3 pay periods worth of data in FY17 right now in my data. Now what we've done to protect the innocent is we went into the names of the employees and we traded them out for Marvel superheroes or whatever the universes are. I'm not exactly sure, but that's what we did. We just put in other people's names or superhero names so that we could show you this and put it out on the SharePoint or YouTube or whatever, so that you can see that. And this is in a calculated column or a helper column. Employee real name, what it does is in my CivPay data, not in everybody's, but in some, it'll have like a period at the end of a middle name. Well, sometimes a person's name has a period in the middle name, sometimes it doesn't. That's a function of how those people's names are input into personnel systems. So when they come through in the R60, some of them have a period at the end of the middle name or middle initial, some of them don't. I want consistency. So what I do is tell it to go find the employee name and substitute a period for nothing and then trim it so that I have consistency. That's what this is. LSL and awards. All I'm doing is telling it to flag me when I have any incident. So LSL does not equal 0, awards does not equal 0. Come over to these 2 columns and tell me if that particular record in the data means that an award or lump sum leave was paid. Issue. This one is kind of a CivPay audit column in the CivPay data. It calculates for you, but it's going to look through here and say manpower PCN, is it missing? Is it less than 7? Let's look at the PEC PERS and the PEC PIF. Let's look at the RCCC. Look, if those are blank, we have incomplete data, incomplete records. We need to correct that or work to try and correct that. The year, and so what it's doing is looking through those key data elements. And if you look at the NGB guidance for civ pay, and it's starting above NGB, it's DOD, it's Congress wanting to come down and say, please execute funds out of the PECs, out of the programs that we've appropriated for those or that we're planning for. So they're doing programming and planning to fund work year authorizations or fund money towards certain things like maintainers, operators, how much force support do we need. We need to make sure that we're executing out of the proper PECs so that they know how much to fund us in the future. So that's what that is, huge bold red lettering in the NGB guidance. So we're adding this in here to create a separate report to do line of accounting audits per pay period, and then help you with the 3821 audits that you're going to have to be doing. Pay hour code. So this pay hour code comes in with the R60 data pull out of CRIS, but what we want to do is kind of give it a name. So we have the ability to quickly and easily do that if I can find the pay hour codes in here somewhere. 3-digit code, there it is, pay hour code, this whole column every single time. So it could be my pay for hourly pay that I did, so regular pay. It could be the government's contribution to my TSP. So all that gets captured because it's a cost of the employee. So healthcare, TSP, and we reach back into this pay hour code to give a table to give these 3-digit codes meaning so that we can look at them if we needed to look at them. So the next thing, adjusted pay. What we can see here is that it's the pay amount minus LSL, which is NGB funded, and minus awards, because awards are paid out of laps, and we want to see our pay amount as a function of actual hours worked, and then we can do analysis that way. If they all get jumbled together, it's going to be difficult for us to understand. So awards, so that I can report on them separately, I pay my awards out. So what this does is it looks up the pay hour code we just talked about and the awards table and says, hey, if this has got a yes in front of it, as in yes, it's an award, then go ahead and pull that out and put it in this column only. So you see a bunch of zeros, and in fact in this year we haven't paid any awards, so there aren't going to be any amounts in here. Lump sum leave, you see a few amounts. Those are those members retiring. Typically they get paid out, and so you'll see that separately. NGB funds that separately. Work years executed. Once again, we're going to look at the hours worked. Every single line, we're going to look at the hours worked and divide it by hours in one work year. 2080 is the hours in one work year in this case. Worked hours, this is simply going back into that pay code table and saying, hey, all these types of hours, was it that increased pay, right? So this is where we're saying it should count towards your 80 hours, or it should not count towards your 80 hours because it's just an increase in pay over the hours that you work. In some cases I've seen it where you're going to do more than 80, but for all practical purposes we're just going to use 80 as a baseline per pay period. And then now we're into the actual data that comes in. So this is where the actual data would stop and has all the other data elements in there. So what we've done in this video is just to get you started. We included this notes tab. Please expand this to however you need. Each individual situation could be very much different. At the end of the day, you just need to be well aware of what's going on and how you're executing. So make those notes as you see fit, expand that as you see fit. This is not tied to anything in particular. Pay codes table, a few new ones to make sure that we're not doing calculations behind the scenes or inside of pivot tables. That would be a little foreign maybe for you to go in and change a hard-coded value that won't change automatically. These pay code tables, separate one out for awards, and then pay codes here is the entire list, and then into the raw data, which we just explained. So go back and watch this video if you're unfamiliar. This is the baseline of everything that we're going to be doing in terms of reporting and decision support. So your R60 out of CRIS, pulling it in. All of these columns are being added automatically for you so that we can separate things like worked hours versus lump sum leave and how that all plays into one another, and then giving you the ability to do some, is this an issue? Do we have an issue with our lines of accounting? So that's it for this video. In the next video we'll start jumping into some of the reports. See you then.